I thought maybe I'd just start off with introducing what Dramaturgs is. So Dramaturgs is a roundtable capsule series, which involves a conversation about the role of dramaturgs, as well as dramaturgs' relationships with the artistic team. So dramaturgical thinking doesn't just solely remain in the domain of the dramaturg. All artists do apply dramaturgical thinking to a certain extent, but having a dramaturg role in the creative process and on the artistic team provides a dedicated lens that can actually deepen artistic decisions as well as challenge some artistic decisions as well. So this series mainly explores the work of a dramaturg as well as how the dramaturg works with other people in the artistic team. So previously, the other sessions, there have been 2 sessions so far, have included dramaturgs and producers, and dramaturgs and choreographers. So this will be the 3rd session, and I believe the 3rd session of the year. Yeah, the last one. And then, and it is directors and dramaturgs. So we have a very exciting panel. I just want to let you know that tonight's session is recorded by the Center 42 team. It's recorded for documentation and archival purposes, and it will be available on the Center 42 website at a later date. And I'll just tell you what's roughly going to happen in the program. There will be about maybe 40 minutes of where we're having this roundtable conversation. After that, we will open up to any suggestions, other viewpoints, questions and answers, just to open up the conversation. So that's roughly how the activities of the night will go. So maybe I'll just kick it off with, so my name is Cheryl Wu, and I'll be facilitating this conversation. But maybe I'll just kick it off with asking the panel to introduce themselves. They've all worked as directors and also dramaturgs, so it's a very interesting to kind of hear how they work and also from different sides. And maybe if I could just get you to give a brief introduction on some of your work, having worked with directors, working with dramaturgs, as well as you maybe being a dramaturg working with directors. Peng-Lon, maybe it's up to you.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for inviting me here. I think I first worked as a dramaturg because I was an artistic director. Because when you start to plan the kind of artistic program that you have within a company, you will have guest directors coming in, and quite a lot of time you'll be involved in talking about the work. But the first time I was a dramaturg was really when we were doing a piece called The Vagina Law. It was written and performed by Li Xie. And I was supposed to be the director. But after the first rehearsal, or the first discussion, I felt that it just doesn't make sense to have a male director directing a piece about the vagina law. So I told Li Xie that maybe let me call myself something and then work with you instead of being a director, but someone who work with you to actually craft this work and provide the kind of a support that you need as an actor or a director. And so at time, because I saw this word called dramaturg, and I thought, okay, just call dramaturg, not really knowing what really dramaturg was. So that was my first dramaturgical work, working with Li Xie, who is a performer as well as a director. So in that case, there was a lot of a third eye, and then providing for that playwright herself a kind of how to frame and how to structure the piece, and also negotiate between the adaptation of this piece with the original piece, the vagina monologue. So there is that part of it. Then subsequently, I find that I start doing some dramaturgical work, but a lot of time, especially in the earlier years, I think in 2000s, where we were asked a lot of time to dramaturg for young directors in arts festival. So I've done it for, I think, Nelson and for Peter Starr. over this last few years, as a dramaturg, I work more closely. I mean, I've done 2 productions with this Australian director, Tamara Salwick. And what is interesting in that piece is that it's a kind of both work that we did was device piece. It's autobiographical in a way, and it's also based on these 2 artists' work. So they have their own practice. So you have their practice, you have their autobiography. At the same time, they are not actor, and the final performance is actually a theatrical performance. So I work very closely with Tamara in that process. As a director, over the last few years, the main dramaturg I work with is Charlene Rajendran. She has worked with me on 2 kinds of work. Theatre productions that I do, like the recent IA. And then the other kind of work that I do, the both sides now, which are my socially engaged practices that involve multidisciplinary art and involve a lot of process working with community. Her role becomes slightly different also. So she's in fact with me through the whole process of the planning all the way to the execution. But her involvement are much more in looking at the process of the engagement and how does it actually translate or go with the kind of the theme and the issues as well as the ethics of that engagement over there. So that's another kind of dramaturgy here, which I engage with Charlene a lot. So basically, let me stop there.
Thank you. Why?
Hi everyone, I'm Yen Ying. I also go by YY. I'm an early career theatre director and creator. Just to share a bit about how and when I started working with dramaturgs. Actually pretty much started back in theatre school when I was in university, and our mentor just encouraged us to have dramaturgs on board our theatrical creations and shows that we did, without really giving us that much guidelines on how to work with or converse with dramaturgs. So it was sort of thrown into the deep end, but it was also a happy accident kind of thing, because I found myself since then not finding it difficult to create or devise a new work without a dramaturg. So since then I've sort of been inseparable with dramaturgs, especially when it comes to new work development or devising processes. I would say there are 2 main kinds of works that I work with and converse with dramaturgs on. One is devised works, original creations, where there is no script or a play or draft text to start with, and it's really processes, director-led devised processes where maybe there's a theme or a certain preoccupation that I'm interested to explore. So for example, right now I'm just recently embarking on a project about toxic masculinity, or masculinity and patriarchy in general. You know, what is toxic masculinity? What is healthy masculinity? And it's just like these big questions very thematically. Then I have a group of collaborators, like performers, a writer in the room, maybe a choreographer, and we just want to make something from it, but there is no text whatsoever, or no conception of characters or narrative yet. So then I would work with a dramaturg from the early stages of it in various phases, and their role also develops and shifts as the piece grows. So in these kinds of early inception stages, drawing from TNS's necessary stages, like devising methodology, where it's like phase 1, 2, 3, and over the years I've also sort of modified and shifted what phases 1, 2, 3 could be for these different processes I've been involved in, instead of following quite religiously to that structure lah. So often in phase 1, where it's an early ideation stage of a device work, the dramaturg would come in to bounce ideas off like thematically, open up new doors, bring in some research, and the question of like what is the core question that you are trying to explore with the work would often start to come up already. And oftentimes I find that I don't have a clear answer to this at the start of a device project. Like masculinity, like if you ask me now, like what is the main thing or like the core question that you are trying to explore with this project, I don't really have an articulate answer for you just yet, because this question actually takes time to, I just have an intuition that it's the theme that I want to explore, but it takes time and conversation to eventually articulate what it is about the piece that I what I want to make, what I want to say or ask with this piece. So the dramaturg would be there to start bouncing off these questions already, and also to get to know the performers in a device world and what they can each bring or contribute and offer, sensing their energies, their life experiences, and how it could be woven into sort of a device process. And then when it comes to the next phase of phase 2, usually that's where we would have some content generated on our feed, quite loose stuff, and it's about structuring the work, finding a certain framework or concept of it. A dramaturg is super useful in this part of the process because they can have a look at the overall arc of how these different pieces come together. If there's a certain motif or language that develops, how do we, in a way, craft the container or the foundation in which to hold this show? And then in the very last phase of phase 3, they function more like a production dramaturg, where we are talking about design choices and how this staging is operating, is it communicating the intention clearly enough, and so on. So that's sort of the rough idea of how I work with dramaturg in a device process. And then the other bucket is written works, oftentimes like with a playwright who already has a script. Oftentimes it's a new play that hasn't been staged ever, possibly. So the most recent production I did was Dive at Wild Rice, where I was a director on, and there was a playwright, Laura Hayes, as well as a dramaturg, Joel Tan. And the three of us kind of worked in this triangulation very closely from the start of it when I was brought on board, and it was all we had was a script, written rather loosely with a lot of possibilities. And so the dramaturg Joel functioned very much as a script dramaturg at the start of that process, and directorially I was involved in these conversations and discussions as well. And then as the script got more firmed up and we were ready to bring it into rehearsal, to workshop on its feet, eventually the role of a script dramaturg shifted to a production dramaturg. And I would bring these dramaturgs into my creative conversations with designers, and they would be involved in table work with the actors where they could help to elucidate on certain ideas or provoke certain questions. And then, as we stage the piece, they will watch run-throughs and see like what parts the intentions are clear and what are not so clear. So I would say those are the two main buckets of work that I would collaborate with a dramaturg on. And loosely, I've also taken on the dramaturg role as well, most recently for a dance theatre production this past weekend, titled The Birthday, by Na Jie, choreographer. And she was interested in weaving theatrical elements in her dance production. And she comes from contemporary dance background. So she brought me on as a dramaturg so I could advise on some of those more theatrical elements, so to speak. Although that line between theatre and dance is also not always clear line. It's quite porous, it's quite blur. But we had a lot of conversations in that, and I supported her by being that outside eye to open up possibilities, springboard ideas, and clarify certain intentions as well. So yeah, 3 main buckets, I would say.
Thank you. Is it?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm the Joint Artistic Director of Checkpoint Theatre. It's something, along with Claire Wong, we were 2 of the co-founders back in 2002. So over the last 22 years, I have effectively done dramaturgy on almost every single production, 40 or 50 productions. Also in teaching, playwriting from 07 to 21. I've probably done dramaturgy on about 200 other plays over the years. I did a quick mental calculation. So my practice probably divides into different buckets, to borrow your word. So in dramaturgy, there's new play dramaturgy and production dramaturgy. New play dramaturgy is further subdivided into devised and I would say playwright-centric or I suppose classical scripted work. In devised play dramaturgy, devised new play dramaturgy, a lot of it consists of me convening the actors who are often like sort of writer-performers and generating questions, provocations, exercises for them to then improvise or go away and write, improvise on the floor, transcribe, and then edit. There's a variety of means of generating content that I will implement. And then I will also oversee suggestions for how to structure that work, how to revise it, how to begin, how to end. Essentially, it's a very end-to-end kind of consultative / overseeing role, oversight role in that entire process. And then in more conventional playwright-centric new play dramaturgy, it consists of, actually the first very long period is a series of discussions with the playwright. What is the play that you want to write? Is this really the play that you want to write? Is this the play you think you want to write for Checkpoint, but actually it's not the best play that you could possibly write? A lot of it is getting to the core of what they're really concerned about or joyful about or angry about and need to interrogate. Then pages come in. Over the years, I've become fairly confident at knowing when I can just say, okay, this is great, just carry on writing. I don't have anything to say at this juncture. Oftentimes, I'll give very general feedback, or most importantly, I'll ask a question, like, where are you going with this? This is very interesting. I didn't expect this in this scene. Can you tell me a bit more about it? So there are those questions that open up possibilities in the writing. I will convene also table reads. So often it first starts with all of us in the Checkpoint Theatre office, and then as it goes later, it may be actors who are brought in, engaged, paid a small fee to actually read, and so the playwright can hear what the play sounds like. Then later on, after we've cast the play, then they'll be part of the reads as well. And then what I do with that read is actually collate and curate the feedback from everybody, and it's written and it's sent to me independently, and I go through it and I think about what needs to be said at what time to the playwright. Some things need to be said more upstream, some things are way like downstream comments, so I can save them for later. Some things I can see where they're coming from, but I don't agree at all, so I will choose not to pass those things on to the playwright. Some things may be very valid, but I know it will unduly affect the playwright at this point in time, so I'll just maybe hold it till later. So there's a lot of, I think, sensitivity and care, and honestly, it's something I've gotten better at over the years. I wasn't terrifically great in the beginning, but I think by now I'm reasonably good at understanding, at being that bridge between people who want to give feedback on the play and the playwright. Then we get into production dramaturgy, which is that, I'm sure you're all familiar with the conventional sense of being the third eye in the room and offering suggestions to the director, interfacing with the designer, sometimes the actors, bringing in literary or historical or thematic context. And I do that, but I also sort of unify the new play script development side and the production dramaturgy, often in recent years by convening script development workshops where the director, especially if it's sort of Claire Wong who's directing a work that I've written or another playwright has written, and I'm the dramaturg of that work, there will be often a 2-week workshop where the actual cast actors, we're working on improv exercises, characters' backstories. Sometimes the playwright will have specific scenes that they would like improvised. So I believe most recently Faith Ng did that with Hard Mode, but I mean, this is actually a very common practice for all of our plays. And I will be working alongside the director to structure that workshop kind of series over the 2 weeks. That will also be the time when I'm doing super tiny surgical, like pencil edits to the script, like really just scalpel, taking out sort of smaller words to sharpen the meaning of the text. So the next bucket is me as a director working with a dramaturg, and it's something that, you know, the four of us had an initial discussion about a couple of days ago. And one of the things I'd like to talk about is the idea that the dramaturgical function is super important. The idea that somebody who's not the writer, not the performer, not the director, not the designer, is there and has a perspective and often a great deal of insight into any of those things, but they're not. They're semi-independent. But that dramaturgical function, historically in checkpoint theatre, has often been performed by assistant directors, more formally, right, who are used or deployed as dramaturgs, consulted as dramaturgs, but also I will be Claire's dramaturg in my capacity as co-producer or joint artistic director, and Claire will be my dramaturg in the room if I'm directing and she's the co-producer and joint artistic director. But also there is the phenomenon of really just turning to a clever young person, which I do regularly, and look for that dramaturgical insight and frequently apply that. So those are the different pillars of my practice.
Thank you for that. I think you guys have all, there are a lot of similarities in the processes, and there are also quite like a few differences as well. I'm interested to know, is there an approach to a beginning conversation if as directors you're working with dramaturgs, or as a dramaturg you're working with a director? What is that first conversation like starting on a new project? Does it entail like how heavily you're involved in rehearsals, or are you talking about like concepts? What are some common questions that come up? Anyone can start, really. Yeah.
Usually the first question would be, why this play now? Or why this work now? And that's where I would like to listen to, and as a dramaturg, that's why I would like to hear from the director. And then I would also want to know the director's process, how he or she is going to create this piece, and why me as a dramaturg and not any other dramaturg. What is it that you want? I think more importantly is actually, what do you see me? How do you want me to function within that whole process? I think that's important. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that everything is cast in stone, right?
Yeah.
So as the process goes, then you realize that you may have to perform more roles than more function than actually was being prescribed initially, and then that had. As a dramaturg,
you find yourself performing more roles.
Yeah.
Okay.
And usually when that happens, you then also have to talk to the director about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't just jump into it and then work on it. I mean, take for example, if in the work that I did with Tan, we were working with Margaret Ling Tan, who is a very well-known pianist, right? At some point, we realized that because Margaret thinks in terms of a musician who has worked, in a lot of time by herself, and she self-directs herself when she performs, and she's a wonderful performer, but she's really not a theatre person, and she doesn't really act. So during the process, as we were trying to craft the work, it was a devising piece. I realized that she was just thinking about each of the musical piece that she needs to play on stage as one complete piece. And I think at that time, the director was still trying to weave the entire concept together with me. But Margaret was in her own world, and she was thinking that the world should be like this. So I then had to talk to the director about this gap, especially how to translate her musical understanding of what a performance is like into a theatrical performance. So when I got the permission from the director, and the director said maybe you should do it, because I offered the director, I think you need to talk to her about this, or else you're going to have a lot of problems in devising. But the director then suggested that I talk to her, because we live in the same apartment. We were in Australia, so I had that kind of opportunity to do it outside rehearsal room. So then outside the rehearsal room, I had that kind of a time and space to talk to her, just to understand what she thinks about her performances and what she thinks this performance is like. And then that helps me to actually slowly do the translation together with the director. So you realize that a lot of time, I didn't expect myself to do that right at the beginning. I was actually tasked to help to structure the piece and to be a cultural translator if there needs to be.
Was the director in that conversation?
For which one?
When you
Oh, that one is a private dinner.
Oh, okay.
After rehearsal, we
so it's
were
like a
casual kind of thing. But what I wasn't going to tell her that the performance is going to be like that. But I was just offering context, how performances are being constructed, so that when it happens inside rehearsal room, she could remember the conversation that we had, and then she could then connect it herself, and then with the director coming in.
I see. So the conversation wasn't specifically about the performance.
No. Yeah, so I was talking about in general to actually build that kind of conversation, because I was just being very mindful that I'm not being a director, telling her this is what the performance is like. So I had to find another way of approaching it. Yeah. So with Margaret, it was like that. So I think as a dramaturg, a lot of time knowing where are your areas of where you first need to function becomes very important. But as a director working with dramaturg is slightly different.
Yeah.
As a director working with dramaturg, I was more interested in telling the dramaturg what I have in mind. Because I think I need a dramaturg to actually play a lot of times the devil advocates or provide certain perception or insights that I might not have. So I'm always very interested in just first verbal diarrhea, just downloading all the things that are in my head, and that includes even things that I feel confused about, even before I start the production. And then I put out everything, and then I would love for my dramaturg then to respond to all those things. And then, of course, I also have conversation with my dramaturg of what do you feel comfortable working on? Because some dramaturg may not want to do certain aspects of the work. So in a way, if we can find a kind of understanding, then that's how it goes.
Actually, I'll bounce off Ping Wan on that. I think when it comes to first conversations with a dramaturg, as a director working on a devised work, the verbal diarrhea is very real in that first chat, and just sharing, why I want to embark on this project, what is causing my preoccupation with. I think most recently my devised work was about aging in women. What made me want to, crack open this theme and really investigate it deeply? Was there a life experience that I had, or why am I currently obsessing over this? I will share that with the dramaturg during that first conversation, and then I would also get to know, say, aging in women, right? You as a dramaturg, what are you interested in when it comes to this theme? What are your concerns? Because especially if it's a theme that's relevant to the dramaturg as well, I'm keen to hear from their perspective what they're interested in or intrigued by also, and understand where their vantage point is. I might also share about some more formal experimentations I'm keen to undertake, or some parameters of the work. So with the work on aging in women, I knew I could cast 4 performers. So then I'm like, okay, maybe it's interesting to have these 4 women across a lifespan. So have a woman who's really young, maybe in early 20s, maybe a woman in her late 30s, maybe someone in her 50s, and someone in her 70s, and so I know just a rough idea that I wanted to cast 4 performers of just varying age ranges, and then explore this idea of aging in women. So it might be something as simple as that, and share these kind of formal curiosities and see what the dramaturg has to offer in response as well. If the work I know is going to be, if there's specifics about the work, I would share that with them as well. I'm interested in an interdisciplinary exploration between text, movement, and sound, for example. And these are the 3 elements I'm keen to really dig into, and how they can collaborate to tell a story or investigate a question. Then I will share that with them also, so they know sort of what are these facets that I want to dig deeper into.
So sometimes your approach to a production might not necessarily be narrative first. It could also be elements that you want to kind of collaborate with
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely. I think for me, I'm very interested in like physical modes of storytelling, dance, contemporary dance, for example. And so I've been, finding little ways to integrate that into my works, like big or small. So like, I often like to work with dramaturgs who are attuned to bodies and movement as well. And then I might share with the dramaturg like why I invited them here. And sometimes it's often because selecting a dramaturg also constitutes selecting a dramaturg who's right for this project, whether thematically or formally, like interdisciplinary, melding of theatre and dance. I would love to work with a dramaturg who has some experience, background, or interest in that area. So that's pretty much for devised works. And then for written work, so like if there's me and a playwright and she has a new script that I'm going to like direct, so then we would sit down with a dramaturg and just send the draft of the play to them and hear what are their early impressions of the work. Like, what is it that's interesting to them? Where do they feel there's possibility to quite open more? Any blind spots that we might have that we are not noticing? So it's very based on like this draft script line, what they can offer to us as playwright and director. And oftentimes I like to work with a dramaturg who's a script dramaturg and then eventually evolves into like a production dramaturg, so they sort of stay the process throughout, although they can also be different people. Or like Huzair said, you could be someone for a script dramaturg and then for production dramaturgy outsource it to different people in the rehearsal room. That's totally valid and interesting as well. So I think first meeting often is like a vibe check as well, to see if the dramaturg and you are on the same wavelength, if they can actually understand your concerns and curiosities and respond back in a way that you feel helpful or inspired. So a dramaturg might be very smart or intelligent, but somehow you might just not hit it on the same wavelength. And I've maybe experienced that once or twice before. Or a dramaturg can just like be agreeing with you on everything, which is also not very helpful, because you want a dramaturg to open up possibilities, like question you, critique, maybe point out certain blind spots and all that. So I think it's a very intuitive relationship for me, director and dramaturg wise. Then as a dramaturg, when I was working with like Jiang, for example, the choreographer, oftentimes the first meeting is trying to understand, like, because she's interested in the notion of birthdays. So it's always like, why? Like, why birthdays? What about birthdays are you keen on exploring? And she might not have all the words yet. It might be really verbal diarrhea. And so as a dramaturg, it's just to pull out, these precious points that actually you intuit could serve as the foundation for the work and what this creator is interested in exploring. And playing a supportive role actually is quite fulfilling and rewarding as well. Siri, is it? Siri caught something I said.
Not the first conversation I would have, but maybe the second conversation as an independent dramaturg is to agree on a fee. And it sounds glib, but actually I think it's very important, because dramaturgy is not necessarily that well established or well known. I have been offered a major international project, not Checkpoint, I mean an external kind of dramaturgy gig, major project, international team. I was asked to do the dramaturgy on it before the funding was in place and before a fee could be given to me. And I knew that the only way this project could work is if and therefore pitched, is if I strung it together and did the dramaturgy, right? So I stepped away from that because I knew that that was not a fair working relationship. If I were the playwright, I would be happy to take a chance, because I know ultimately what I do, even if it doesn't work with this producer, is still my property. As a dramaturg, it's not your property. You're there to provide a service, and you have to agree on the fee for that service before you perform that service. Because if you perform that service, the perceived value of that service diminishes immediately after you've performed it. Oh, but what did you do? You just rearranged the paragraphs. That's the entirety of it, perhaps. But that is the thing that is worth the X number of thousands of dollars. And I say agree on the fee as a way of distilling all of these things about what is the scope of the work, which both of you have mentioned, what duties are expected of you, but also things that you shouldn't do, things that things that the writer, performer, or the playwright, or the director, or the company would not be comfortable with you making a suggestion about or making a contribution about. So yeah.
And this would be early on in the.
That's why I said second conversation.
Second
First one is like, oh wow, what a great
Okay.
project! This is amazing. This is And you go and say, oh, do I have these weeks clear in my schedule? Otherwise, and then you ask,
Then you ask
what's the
fee.
fee? Yeah.
But I do have something I forgot. Is how many rehearsals must I attend? And
As a dramaturg.
as a dramaturg, because the director may want you only to come for certain period, but there are directors like the Australian one that I work with. I attend almost every rehearsal, so I'm close to like 90% of the time there, right, all the way until just before it moves in, because we construct the work along the way. The projector was there, the video designer was there, the content was made every minute as we were doing the work. And so as a dramaturg, I sit there to actually observe the entire process, and I have to. And that was the most productive way. And I really couldn't think of any other way of working with this kind of device work. But there are certain other work, where if the directors already know what they sort of want to do, so they may not need you all the time, they just need you to feedback to what they have created. And then I wouldn't impose myself, but you then have to ask as a dramaturg, would you want to work in this kind of setup? Is that something that you enjoy? Because I think as a dramaturg, much as it is a service, but it is also a creative service. And I think there's something very creative about it, that I think you pick that up and then you want to work with this director because there's some kind of sparks that's going on. And I think that's the wonderful part of it.
Do you think the fees sometimes also determine whether it's one or the other, like your level of creative involvement, or for you is?
For me, the fee not that important at this moment, but it is important that there is a fee.
Yeah, that's where I was coming from. It's not how big is the
Yes,
fee, but
yeah.
is there a fee?
Yeah.
Do you consider this work important enough that
Correct.
you remembered that it must be a line item
Yeah.
in your budget?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I can see different fee. Like now, I'm doing a project with Hong Kong, and the fee is actually not a lot, but I have to do a lot of traveling. But because I think the process is interesting, the work is interesting, and then you have to work with certain limitations. I can't be there all the time, so you work such that you milk the maximum possibility. So yeah, I have to go there 3 to 4 times, just to get the project down. Then I'll do so. But what is important is, again, I think as a dramaturg, we look a lot into the process and how meaningful the process is will help us to decide, at least for me.
Actually, if I can just add on to that, important that there is a fee. I feel like sometimes I bring dramaturgs on projects also to formalize the importance of having this outside eye, because I could very well send the script just to a friend, give me a few feedback, and then make it that totally informal. But maybe I would cite the example of a device work that I did. So this device work is titled "Where Are You?" and it was an exploration of grief, how we experience grief and confront death. And there were many iterations of this work. I started developing this device work in New York, but there was also a Singapore version of it. There was an online version during COVID. Then I did a New York version again. So for the 4th iteration of the work, I already had so many materials, right? But I knew I wasn't just going to restage a previous version. I wanted to rearrange certain things, develop certain things, but I had a lot of raw material already, and it was just about reconfiguring and deepening it slightly. And I had very limited time to put together this 4th version as well. So I maybe had 1 month to just look over all my past materials, put it into a script, then go to New York, rehearse it for 3 weeks, and then put it up kind of process, but I definitely needed an outside eye just to read through this draft of the script that I had put together, maybe 2 or 3 rounds of it. I had certain design element ideas that I wanted to bounce ideas off, but maybe it took like 3 meetings at most and like 2 other conversations or something like that, and I only had a few $100s to like pay this dramaturg. And so, but I wanted to formalize that process instead of just asking a friend to be like, hey, can you give me some feedback? So then, I mean, Nian is sitting in this room right now. She was the dramaturg on that process. And we just had those like 3 conversations, very quick and dirty. She gave me all her comments on the broad macro framework, as well as sometimes on line level detail. So like quite quick and dirty, but I wanted, in a way, to acknowledge the effort and credit her as dramaturg and give her a fee, even though it was a small, very, very modest fee, just to recognize that work. Huh? Yeah, and Popeye's chicken, just buy fried chicken to a house. Yeah.
So I know for that particular production, you had 4 versions, or I guess it was the 4th time you were kind of performing it or staging it, right? And so the dramaturg that you had worked on the 4th one is different from. Did you have dramaturgs on the previous 3 as well?
Yeah, the first production I had 3 dramaturgs because we were in school and I didn't have to worry about budget. So then I had 3 dramaturgs just to give me all their different perspectives and feedback. But then as it went out of school and we had to work within budget, and I felt the importance of paying people, even if it's just a fee. And I'm really talking from like independent project, early career artist point of view here. Then it often became like a singular dramaturg. So it was a production in Singapore, and I might work with that one Singaporean dramaturg. And when I'm back in New York again, I will work with one dramaturg in New York, for example.
Yeah, just to bounce off that process, and I guess also anyone can kind of chime in. Is there instances where, so using that example, because there are so many different dramaturgs for each of the versions, they all come in with different positions, different takes and perspectives on it. Are there moments where you find that maybe the dramaturg's feedback might be different from what you've discussed, and maybe challenges your artistic decision? And how do you navigate around those how do you filter, I guess, as directors? Or if you know as a dramaturg that the suggestion that you're about to give is quite different from what the director is thinking about, how do you then navigate those kind of feedbacks?
I think if you're a dramaturg about to make radically challenging suggestions in a production dramaturgy situation, then a lot of it just comes down to interpersonal communication, trying to bring people along with you gently. Maybe it's, I don't take you from here to here in this conversation, I take you from here to here, and then tomorrow I'll work on you a little more, and then a little more, and a little more, and then maybe by, in a week's time, I will have shifted you around to my point of view. I think I've certainly learned that there is a value sometimes in being less direct, because I've historically been, quite direct and quite insistent, and I think that's not always necessarily led to the best outcomes. So one of the things I've learned is, just read the room, understand where somebody is, understand that they're on, a different trajectory artistically, intellectually, what their interests are, and just try and make your speech work for them. And I think that's been the great lesson which I'm still learning in my career. On the other side, I, as a director, I super do not have a problem with a suggestion that is quite radical, because if it's a good idea and I realize it's better than my previous idea, I will take it. I mean, such ego as I have does not reside in that. It does not reside in being closed off to suggestions that are different, because I think ultimately, if you're the director and your name is on the poster or the website or whatever, and you take a suggestion that maybe challenges what you'd originally thought, but the show is better for it, then you look good. So why should I, in that moment, have an issue with like an intern pointing out something that I maybe completely overlooked? No, it's great. I'll take it. I've always believed, early in my career, in my 20s, one of my late mentors and friends, Christian Jit, who's a Malaysian director who did quite a bit of work in Singapore, contemporary of Pao Kun, and they were good friends. So he directed some of my early plays, and we were in an interview together, and the interviewer said something to the effect of why the great Christian Jit working with this obnoxious young man, Hussein Sulaiman, and he said something that was very kind but actually very true, which is that in the arts, there's no hierarchy based on seniority. It's a hierarchy based on talent. And if the person has talent, then you work with them. Or you take their idea in that moment. Or you collaborate with them. Or you befriend them. And that, since then, it crystallized my own fairly egalitarian approach to things. And I've just been applying that since then. So I think it's in checkpoint shows, whether by accident or by creating an atmosphere where people can contribute at the script development phase, in the rehearsal room, I think our work has become richer for it. And certainly my personal practice has become richer for acknowledging that, that maybe one's own talent or genius solely resides in being able to not have your own good ideas, but identify someone else's good ideas. Right? It's a talent for curation, it's a talent for filtering, it's a talent for saying, oh my God, yes, let's go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think I agree with Huzel whereby, if there is something that's not working and it's been there for some time, and usually that would mean that there's something fundamentally huge that need to shift within the thing, and to suddenly call it out will not help. Of course, sometimes what I do is that I think there is a big issue here, but I may not have a solution. We may not have a solution, so that we all go back and think about this problem. And I'm not saying that because the directors can't see it. The thing is that as a director, when you're directing, right, because you have so many things in your mind, there's something that's not working, but you don't have the mind space to work on it. You let it stay there, and then after the third rehearsal, everything seems okay, because you've gotten used to it, you see. So as a dramaturg, once you see that, and then you see that happening again, and then that's your job to actually then to remind the director that, hey, we did talk about this is not really working. And I think I also employ the same tact whereby I don't immediately say, hey, let's just radically change it. Sometimes what I do is we discuss and we offer a number of possibilities. And then that's where we run through those possibilities, and some are quite fundamental, but which means it also flips the piece in a way that it provides a new perspective to the piece that is previously not there. So then the director have to make the decision, and that's the part whereby as a dramaturg, you have to accept the fact that the director makes decisions based on what he or she can do at that moment. And he, she, or them may find that at that moment, I can only handle this much. And you can provide as much support in that process. But in the end, the person who carries this process is actually the director, not so much the dramaturg. Then you have to accept that and then provide as much support towards there, or not even getting the best solution out of it. So that's something that as a dramaturg I must accept. Then as a director, I think same thing. Then you also need to think about what you can do in that space and how much you can achieve within that rehearsal period and the kind of hours that they have. And in that case, good collaborative kind of workspace is very, very helpful. And the people who can help to read the room is actually the dramaturg more than the directors a lot of time. because the directors are fighting fire a lot of time. But a dramaturg, you actually have a lot of mind space out there. You can actually create a kind of a liminal space, and then you just exist there and you just watch and you say, I think I see this opportunity and that kind of possibility. And that's where you can then offer the directors, how you can actually go about, work with this designer first rather than this designer, because then that will be very useful. So in a way, as a dramaturg, you are not only just dramaturging the work itself, but the process to the work. And that offers you, and actually, I think we've also spoken that all our designers and all the talents, they have certain dramaturgical training and thinking, in them. They know their stuff. It's just about translating each of the things that they have, the elements, and putting them together such that they become something that makes meaning for everyone. Yeah.
So dramaturg, in that sense, also has to get to know the team quite closely, right? It's almost like they have to understand what each talent kind of brings to the table.
Yes, you have to, but also it depends also in certain places where I go to, I realize that it's very hard to get very close with certain team.
Yeah.
So I keep a distance, but you continue to observe the way they make work, because it's not just about the work, it's also about the way they make work, the way they take instructions, the way they create can be very useful for you to put in things together when you work with your directors.
How does that observation usually take place? Is it in rehearsals, or do you kind of attend meetings?
Meetings and rehearsal room. I mean, if with actors, dancers, yes, rehearsal room is the best. You see the way they respond to the choreographer. You look at, how come the instruction is taken in that way and then turns into something? And that's interesting. Whereas designer is actually two things. One is what they say in the meeting, and actually what comes out in the drawing. And then from the drawing and the way they explain the work, the design is also very interesting. And then you hear, and then you see how they play with ideas.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of nuggets of wisdom that Heng Luan and Hosea have shared in terms of how to negotiate any sort of potential disagreements between directors and dramaturgs. And the little bit that I might add is just that I haven't found myself in a situation where I've been in a gridlock situation with a dramaturg, something that we cannot really agree on kind of thing. Because actually the roles are very different. They are not a co-creator. They are oftentimes a supportive presence, a third eye. And so at the end of the day, it's my work, my name is on it as director. And then when I'm dramaturging Jieng's work, it's Jieng's creation. It's not mine. I'm there to help support her artistic vision and identify blind spots, open up possibilities, but I wouldn't take credit for it as my work. And so vice versa. So I guess when there are, disagreements, I might offer a suggestion as a dramaturg, but if she might be I think it's okay. I'm okay to let that slide. So there are certain things that I'm keyed into, but she is now aware of since I've pointed it out, but is willing to let slide. Or certain things that when I'm a director working with a dramaturg, they might point something out and we might mutually recognize that it's just subjective taste and preferences. And oftentimes the dramaturg in that case is happy to defer to the director. I found very interesting what Heng Luan said about these bigger structural issues that might exist from early on. And it makes me reflect on directorially as well. Sometimes I'm aware, dramaturg has pointed it out, but because I have so many other fires to fight, so I'm not, that is at the back of my mind, but I haven't gotten to it yet. So they are helpful there to remind the director of what still needs to be worked on. And because if it keeps coming up, that means it's a recurring issue, quite foundational, fundamental issue that we should look into. Otherwise, the house of cards is going to fall just at the end later. So, but yeah, and oftentimes it's not that I'm ignoring the dramaturg. It's just I don't have bandwidth in that particular moment to deal with it. So that's making me realize that as well. But I'll get to it at some point. But then if I'm dramaturging and the person just keeps ignoring it, then I'm okay, maybe it's just not high on their priority list. What I think is high on my priority list, as a structural defect or issue, they might not think so. Then dramaturg, I feel I just have to let it slide. I'll just have to let it pass. Yeah, it's not my work. It's theirs at the end of the day.
One of the principles that's been very useful for me in managing a lot of creative relationships. It's something I heard from, I think it was somebody quoting Neil Gaiman in a Writers' Festival panel many years ago. Neil Gaiman apparently said if somebody tells you, if somebody identifies a problem, they're almost always right. If somebody offers a solution, they're almost always wrong. So I apply this when I'm a new play dramaturg. I'll say, hey, this is not really working, but I'm not going to tell them. I mean, very rarely, unless it's something very simple and technical, am I going to dictate this discussion. But almost always, the solution that the playwright will come up with is going to be infinitely better than what I, as a dramaturg, will say. Similarly, if I'm the dramaturg, I can and frequently do tell Claire, scene 12 seems a bit slow, and she'll go, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to tell her how to make it not slow or not low energy. That's for her to fix. So identify the problem, but don't, unless you're damn sure and it's very simple, don't presume to offer the solution.
As a dramaturg, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
After this weekend dramaturging that dance theatre production, speaking candidly, I was like, oh, being a dramaturg is quite shook, because like I go in to watch the run, then I give my feedback and observations, so then identify certain problems, then I just go away. And then the next time I come back, oh my god, the problem is solved. Sometimes, like miraculously, like the creators managed to just like find a solution for it. The choreographer made this transition so much more seamless and effective. And I'm like, without me like doing anything, just identifying it and making them aware. So, and my commitment was like quite low. So I just like was a third eye. That's all. And I was like, wow, maybe I should do this more often.
I guess it highlights how important that third eye is. It's like once you kind of, I guess, say the challenge that maybe they haven't thought to put high up on the priority list, or they haven't thought to like see it, just by having that voice in that room to meet that challenge and try and find solutions for that challenge, then things kind of work out.
Yeah, but as a director, it's so tedious.
Yeah.
When a dramaturg identifies the problem, then you're like, oh my god, then I have to have 3 sleepless nights trying to untangle that and like work with the actors in the room and all that. And then the dramaturg just comes back again and then like gives out. So it's very dissonant, you know, wearing these 2 hats.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for, I think there's been a lot of great points in the room and a lot of great little nuggets of experience that I think we can all kind of relate to. I just want to open up to the floor for not just question and answers, but also kind of responses to what you've heard, maybe sharing some of your experiences regarding what we've kind of talked about. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mark. And I have a question because it's clear that 3 of you are directors and dramaturgs in different projects. And I just would like to find out, how would you know that you are arriving at the own limits of your own habits and tendencies as a dramaturg? And what strategies do you then have to, because you know, like sometimes when I'm the outside eye of some of my friends' pieces, I'm also starting to become very self-reflexive of myself, and maybe this is how I see space and time, but it's not how my friends see space and time, right? And I'm always questioning myself, you know, when I give them my advice or point out the problems I see, am I limiting something that might actually be the next genius in dance, right? So maybe a 2-part question, do you know, does it become clear to you when you're arriving at the limits of your own habits and tendencies? And then B, if so, what strategies do you have to deal with then your creative partners?
I think as a dramaturg, because you didn't assemble the team, the director or the production assemble a team probably with people whom you have not even worked before, and they may have different kind of aesthetic, you know, from what you are familiar with. And because you're a dramaturg and you already put yourself in the third eye, and then you don't have to make decisions a lot of time yourself. There's a lot of space for you to step up and then question yourself, and then even allow that kind of distancing, and then to appreciate what some other people can create. And in a way, I think as a dramaturg, one of the things that I try to do is to be curious with all the things that happen. I think that curiosity helps a lot. Rather than, hey, this is what I think is good, but I'm curious why this happened. I'm curious how did this and this come together. But as a director, that is more a problem because you work a lot with your habit. And actually, that's why a dramaturg is really good, because then the dramaturg sometimes, just kick you a bit like, hey, I'm a bit too comfortable, or I'm just too habitual. And maybe I'm just seeing things that I'm used to. Because the zone of work is very different. And I think that would be more of what, as a creator, you need yourself to, because you are creating with yourself. And so how do you actually need to step up? Yeah, that's my quick response to it.
In my practice, what I'm proudest of is actually I cured myself of the need to seem intelligent. Which I think all of us want, but very early on in both my playwriting teaching and in new play development in Checkpoint or dramaturgy or even directing, I'm actually very comfortable saying, okay, good, yeah, I got nothing, no comments. Because then when I do have a comment, it means something. It's not like, oh, this is now, the spotlight is on me, I look around frantically and I have to say something in order to prove my presence in the room. No, I'm people tease me about it a lot, but often when I work with writers, there are whole sessions where they'll, be talking through things and I'll be like, good, keep writing. Because I know that anything else at that point would just be me trying to be clever, but that's not what is needed there. Yeah, and honestly, I do come up against the limits of my ability, and I'm very open. Like, I don't think I can offer any value to this. I'm not the best person for this, which is why I'm very happy to turn to somebody who does know about these things. So when I directed Frango, for instance, a play about national service reservists in camp training, I had three assistant directors, two of whom had done OCS and one of whom was a training officer. So a lot of things I didn't know how to, what was it, shell scrape? Do the shell scrape. I didn't know the kind of fire and movement drills or whatever. So I outsourced it to them. Yeah, I'm not, don't betray the Official Secrets Act, but teach me something.
But yeah, I think whatever you pointed out, you used the term self-reflexive, and I think that's important, for a dramaturg to have. So I tried to reflect a lot when I was dramaturging for that production this past weekend, as to my vantage point, where I'm coming from, what my set of experiences are, and how I'm thus receiving this work. So for example, I might give a dramaturgical thought or feedback pertaining to character, because as a theatrically trained person, I access a lot of things from the vantage point of character. But that choreographer might not actually be focusing on character in that moment. Maybe it's more on movement quality and just general vibe or feel. So I would try to identify that, okay, that's where I'm coming from, but this is what she's actually concerned with. But at the same time, personas and characters are nonetheless coming out for me and the audience. So being aware of vantage points and perspectives, where we are each looking at it from, and finding that melting point, I think, is something that I have learned recently. I'm still working on. And then directorially, I think very much second Heng Luan, we all have our habits and comfort things that we return to. So one strategy I employ is just to be very upfront with my dramaturgs about it. Early on, I was hey, I was telling my dramaturg, hey, I love white sets. I love white wall, white floor, white everything. And I know this is my bias. I can do any play with a white set. So let's break out of that. Let's try, okay? And then this play that was about obsessive, unrequited love eventually became a fully red set. And it actually worked for that moment because it was oven hot and compressing on the performers and all that. But if this wasn't brought to awareness, it might have ended up with a white set like any other production. So the other thing that I've noticed is a habit of mine is when I'm devising, I might choose 3 threads, 3 storylines, 3 main characters to focus on, and then just let these threads together. And I'm very comfortable doing that, devising, and I know that I always fall back on that. So I might be upfront to my dramaturg about that. That's a devising strategy I have, and now let's break out of it. So how do I now create a device work where, for example, there are no scene by scene cuts where it's one whole flow throughout the play. Where I haven't done it before, so I might tell my dramaturg like, oh, that's something I haven't done before, that I'm interested in, that will completely subvert what I'm used to. So they're aware. I think that openness and communication, and self-reflexivity.
I'm sort of reminded of Anne Bogart saying something about what happens in rehearsal. Is that she says, if you're stuck in a scene, right, then what you really do is that you just, what first idea that comes into your head, just do it. And then just leave it there, and then for the rest of the people to respond to it, and new ideas come about. And I think that's a very good mantra for me to work with, because sometimes, really, the first thing that comes to your mind is actually damn stupid, right? So I will usually put that out and say, this is a very stupid idea for myself. You'll see, and then you'll see what will happen here. And then that's very useful, because then people will add on. I think similarly, as a dramaturg, sometimes, you can't deny that you do have your own preferences. And certain times when I see certain things, I think this is a peeve of mine. I don't like scene change usually. I don't like blackouts. How can we actually, do you want to sort it out or not? And I would be quite upfront with what I have in terms of my peeve.
Hi, my name is Marvin, early career director and playwright as well. I wanted to ask, both as a question of directing and dramaturgy. When you direct a show, and you've already talked through the design of the dramaturg, for example, what's this play about, why are you staging this play, all that is done already, and then you go on as a director, start shaping the show, right? Do you have any preferences as to whether you want the dramaturg in the room while you're shaping the show, or do you shape the show entirely, then you get the third eye?
For me, I'm happy with the dramaturg being present whenever. It's again about how much the dramaturg intervenes or contributes at what stage. Often it's like, no, I know, just let me do the thing first. There's nothing to comment on. Let me just do the thing, and then, in a week, let's talk. Yeah.
Same. I think it's always nice to have someone to be in there, because then when that someone is in there, not only would this person be able to talk about what comes out from the rehearsal process, but how it came out. You see, sometimes when we want to get to that scene, we when you see a run, you only see what comes out there. But actually, there's so many negotiation that happens over there, and it's probably sometimes some of this negotiation that falls through, and that's why the scene goes that particular way. So having a dramaturg sometimes is very useful, because you're deep, again, like I say, as a director, you're so deep in it, you're managing all these things. And then the dramaturg will just suddenly, just now that moment, there was this. Oh, I didn't realize that there was that communication thing that was happening. And that's very, of course, that could be done by your stage manager, or that could be done by someone. And I think, in like what Jose has said, I do think that a lot of them play dramaturg in various ways. I've had crew who came to me and said, I think this scene is really slow. I love it being slow, but I think I cannot take it. That's what the crew say. I'm going to go back and think, really? Then how? I think that's very much part of that thing. I think the process.
Yeah, I think similar to both of them. I feel like, for me, dramaturgs welcome at any stage in the process, because as a director, as you know, there are so many decisions to make, right, in a production, from staging to design and all that. It's so many. And sometimes there are certain things that off the bat intuitively, you want to go there, definitely traverse staging. No thrust, no procedure, nothing, just traverse. I know this. But then there are some things like, should the flooring be like marble flooring or carpet flooring? And then sometimes you just need someone to bounce the idea of which would work better for the story, for the motive and ideas that we're exploring in this play, and then to have that dramaturg in that design meeting and just be able to bounce the idea off with the set designer as well. It often makes for more fulfilling conversation, and then you are more settled with the choice that you made in the end, rather than it just being an arbitrary one. So I like to, in a way, dramaturgically justify things. So to know why we're having this marble flooring instead of this carpet flooring is actually important for me. and so I know how to activate this flooring, something as simple as the flooring, how to light it then, what is the significance of these streaks on the floor rather than something soft like carpet. So a dramaturgical justification is always helpful for me when directing a work.
Have you observed differences working with dramaturgs who are also directors in their own capacities versus with dramaturgs who work primarily or entirely as dramaturgs?
Charlene was director before, right? And she was also written, but not so much, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to answer that question. Joel is a playwright.
Playwright, yeah. I feel like oftentimes when I encounter dramaturgs, they have another like primary practice artistically in theatre or what. So like Nian is also an academic and a researcher, and then Joel Tan is a playwright as well and a dramaturg. And then there are director dramaturgs like us also. So there's sort of that like primary area that we are naturally more attuned to, but then we would oftentimes be aware of the scope and the other elements of the production and do our best to also, feedback from those areas. That's my general answer. For the production I did, the dance theatre production this past weekend, actually my directorial eye was useful because the choreographer was also performing in the piece, so she couldn't watch a single full run. So actually my thoughts and feedback were a mix of dramaturgical thoughts as well as giving her the directorial eye. I wasn't directing the piece, but I gave her some directorial perspectives, and there also overlaps between these two, obviously. So I guess maybe she made a wise choice by bringing on board like a dramaturg with directorial perspective, simply because she was performing the piece and can't even like watch it in tech, like a tech run of it. Yeah.
And you also have a deep interest in movement as well.
Exactly.
Right? So part of you are naturally attuned to some of the vocabulary there as well.
So if that's the case, then when I was working with a dance piece, I'm not a dance person. I'm a theatre director, and it was a really contemporary dance kind of work. So I spent quite some time in the rehearsal basically trying to understand the communication that happens between the choreographer and the dancers, and how the dancers then execute the movement. So I have no dance background, so I play a lot of time as a third eye, as a keen observer, keen listener, and that was helpful. So in a way, do you need to know dance? You need to know a bit. You do need to know, but you do need to have that kind of perceptivity to all this kind of body nuances and the way the body moves in order to appreciate it. But if you don't have, then if you are very text-based and then you enter into that kind of space, you can't converse. Yeah. So I think in a way, it's not whether this person is a director or not, but I think this person should have that kind of sensitivity, to that particular discipline of work.
Or they have sensitivities that complement yours. And I think, so like for Secondary the Musical, my two assistant directors who often served the dramaturgical function were Vishnu Charan Naidu, who's a theatre practitioner but also a trained dancer. So I think he's acutely aware of bodies in space and their relationship. And Mark Gabriel Lowe, who trained as a ceramic artist, so he thinks sculpturally, but a lot of his practice is graphic design and sort of production design. So he also has a very visual sense of stage pictures. So often, if something was not quite right, I would just suddenly turn to them and say, what do you think? And then an idea frequently would come that resolved it, and you could tell it comes from their particular background and training and set of skills. So yeah.
Correct.
I think we have time for just one last question. Yeah?
Hi, my name is Vincent. I'm really not very sure on, not really understanding like all your domains and what you've done and how deep you are into your own, what do you call that? your specialties. Based on what you have shared, I have, personally just now I've learned, as in I got a lot from what you shared. But a question for me is, as you said, sensitivity, filtering, knowing your what you know, and at the point of time when you watch, know what to say and how to do it. How do you increase that sort of sensitivity, or how do you increase that sixth sense or third eye, or what do you call like the power? How do you like the know it all at that moment? You know the like the instant. You know what I mean? So how do you get a concentrated view on that? Is it like crossing boundaries and domains, or is it exposure? How do you improve your sense of what you know is right? That's my question. I'm quite amazed by what you all shared. I have no exposure at all from all of you. As in, like, whatever you have said. So I'm curious how to improve.
I think because theatre unites a lot of disciplines, people who are useful in theatre are those who just know a lot of random shit. And I think that's really important, as opposed to, I mean, obviously, like certain specialist training is absolutely needed, and but people who know a lot about a lot of weird ass things, very, very important in theatre. So you cast your net quite wide.
I think, I mean, bouncing off Huzia, probably exposure is a big part of it. I think the more, or at least for myself, the more theatre shows I watch, the more dance shows I watch, the more attuned I get to different kinds of sensitivities. And more books I read about a particular like area of interest kind of thing. So I guess that's one. But also I feel like wavelength wise, sometimes you just vibe with certain people or you don't. Sometimes certain people's ideas just naturally inspire you or you don't. So I think finding your tribe in a way as well, I think for me is important. And then the last thing I think is age. I think with age you get more wisdom and maturity, and I'm looking forward to when my sensitivities and sensibilities will also grow and develop and mature with age and experience and just general life experience also. Yeah.
Just on the contrary,
Not everybody gets better, Some get worse.
Yeah, so I mean, as someone who is reaching 60 in 2 years' time, I'm constantly asking myself at this moment of my, growth as still got growth, if there is, as an artist. Like, have I become so set in the way that I do things that I am so stuck? How receptive am I to other new things that are happening? I mean, all the new media, all the things that happen on TikTok. There's a kind of aesthetic there that sometimes when I look at it, like, I still look at that, but not necessarily I would do it. But then I also ask myself, does that inform the way I work? And does it change the way I work? Or should I change? What are the things I need to adapt? And I think that's something that I still don't know. I mean, the thing is that we grow. What works and what don't work, it really depends. It's subjective. And also, you may have to develop into a certain sense whereby you just have to trust, have confidence in yourself. The tribe becomes very important because these are the people who tells you honest opinion. Yeah.
Thank you.
So what I'm hearing is I guess be kind of receptive, expose yourself to different people, different types of processes, and also be curious about certain things, while I guess trying to tune yourself to what clicks with you and what doesn't click with you so much. Which I think is a great way to kind of sum up the conversation. Oh, sorry, there's one more question. Yes, sure.
Earlier question, because I think the question was also asking about instinct and experience, and maybe intuition what you were saying as well. Maybe in terms of whether aesthetics over meaning and those kind of things, but also in terms of the politics and also maybe certain boundaries that you also have to be that. So I'm just wondering how is the experience to sort of balance that out with the sort of observations that you provide to the people that you collaborate with.
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
Based on like your instincts or experience in the kind of observations that you're having about the piece, how do you also then, I guess, balance that with certain boundaries that may need to be in place, or maybe with the politics of the team, and how do you, I guess, strike a balance in what you offer?
Timing is important. It's overlooked frequently, underrated. The right words at the wrong time also doesn't mean can actually be terrible. So you need the right words at the right time as well.
I think just a little nugget to add. Sometimes if I feel like I'm hitting my limitation as a dramaturg as well as a director, I might outsource that dramaturgical function. So for example, for Dive, the recent show I did, there were certain things that neither myself as director nor the dramaturg Joe felt equipped to speak about or to comment about. For example, the racial politics in the work with casting these actors, playing these roles. And so for the last week of rehearsals, we had open, invited runs where we invite trusted friends from different demographics and backgrounds just to hear from them. I was very appreciative that it would take those 2 hours to watch the play, sit down with us, give us their thoughts. So me and the dramaturg would collectively have these conversations with other people as well. So that was one strategy we employed because we knew that we had certain blind spots that the two of us could not cover, both as director and dramaturg. Yeah.
Can I just say that beside rehearsal time, there are time outside rehearsals. I think those are equally important. That give space for yourself or for your directors, to actually sit through the process and sit through the problem. Like I mentioned that a lot of the interesting conversation where it gets really deep is during dinner. A lot of the theatre people love to have their local time. As director, I can't join them because I don't smoke, so you miss out on that. But there are a lot of conversations and a lot of things that happen there, and so what you do is that you must know that they exist and pick them up. And I would think that that's something that you, even as a dramaturg, you have to think about a lot of time.
Yeah, there's certain theatre making cultures where the type of the Japanese, we've all collaborated with our Japanese friends. What happens in the room, in the rehearsal room, and that dynamic is very different from what happens at dinner, drinking. I mean, the most interesting conversations I've had, which then inform the next day's work, is we're in the onsen, we're naked, we're standing in the water, our little towels are on our heads, and we're talking about, the scene. But that kind of conversation in that theatre making culture is impossible in the room. Without a huge, maybe months of preparatory work. But you go out and you've had X number of Asahi, and then you go to the onsen, and then it's different, right?
I want to see that scene in a play. Can you write that?
Okay. Brendan to play me.
Yeah. So when you work with Margaret, when she goes in the rehearsal room, she's already on the piano. So there is no space in between. So that's why my dinner time with her, or the lunch time, where after the scene, as we're walking, I will walk beside her and then what happened? Or the director will have that conversations, and those are so important. And then that gives us the space. Then we come back and then we can chill.
I have to say that is hard for introverts. When rehearsal is over, then I just want to have my own smoke break. Without anybody. So I guess that balance.
I also need
to strike. Yeah.
thought that was
Can I squeeze in one question?
okay. Just one last one.
Yeah, sorry. So if one works with like social agencies, youth organizations, because I took a scan of the room, I can assume a lot of people like are interested in theatre. We would know what dramaturgs are, but youth organizations, social agencies that we do applied theatre projects with won't know what a dramaturg is. What are the words? How would you convince them to see value in a dramaturg the same way that an artist would?
Yeah, consultant, cultural advisor,
Yeah.
researcher,
So change that name.
if need, or a subtitle, like dramaturg, parentheses, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
very.
you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sarah.